Energy is a key factor for the European society. It is a key factor for the economical development, for the industrial competitiveness, for a sound environmental space. The European Union now is proposing us to build up an energy union, and I think it's a great challenge, and we have to be at the level of this very big and very extraordinary important challenge. But the first thing that we have to do is to accomplish the internal market. It has taken 30 years when we founded and we proposed the creation of the internal market in the energy sector, electricity and natural gas. And we have to combine these with the decarbonization of the European economy, and most in particular with the promotion of energy renewables. We are living a revolution in terms of renewable technologies, and now with also batteries and all the efforts from the demand side. So there are many challenges in the European Energy Union and in the field of energy. So we do hope that the next decade it will be the decade for the energy at the European Union level.
I think the challenges on energy policy are looking at the goals, so what are the goals that we want to achieve, and try to implement them consistently. So from this perspective, I think that one of the important points is to try and get rid of the flexibility that we have in tax matters in respect of energy, and try to shift the powers to the level of the European Union. It is rather difficult to do right now. We may need to avoid and overcome all the different actions by the states, which can have market fragmentation effects and enhance legal certainty. Having an energy policy also implies having legal certainty as to the effects of the existing rules. And one more challenge is to try and understand to what extent the general block exemption regulation for energy policy and tax matters are appropriate, are accurate, and are sufficient.
The European Union wants to be a leader in the renewable sectors, and up to now it has shown not only its willingness to, but in fact objectives which has been achieved by the European Union as a whole to be the leader in the world in the field of renewables energies. Under this context, the EU is trying to make a new directive for renewables. The one we have is of the year 2009, and we are drafting a new directive. The European Commission has made a new consultation procedure to know what agents think about the proposal. And the main discussions are about how the support scheme should be drafted. Do we want a support scheme EU-wide, or do we want to have 28 EU member states support schemes? Do we want financing to be in the shoulders of taxpayers, or to be in the shoulders of consumers? Do we want to finance production of renewables, or do we want to finance investment in renewables? Do we want to create auctions to have access to existing finance, or do we want to everybody which asks for the finance to get it? So there are many open questions still about the future of the renewable sectors. But it is clear that under the Energy Union policy, renewables are at the core issue together with efficiency. So renewables, energies and efficiency are really the two key points of EU energy policy for the 30 years to come.
I was chairing a very interesting session on the difference of the concepts of tax law in the environmental sector and the tax sector. I have been doing state aid law since 1980, and I was the advisor for the Dutch National Gas Corporation on state aid. So there were some very interesting issues there. We still haven't totally solve the challenges in the banking sector. So we really have to continue working hard on that. And the energy sector and the environmental sector will also be an enormous challenge in the near future.
Actually, with Marta, we are working a lot on the concept of environmental taxation and environmental tax in general, and in order to understand whether we can distinguish between environmental tax and energy tax. We do believe that legal concepts are really important, and it's what matters at the end of the day. And this is why we are doing this research together. And I think it's really important, at least from my perspective, to have input coming from different persons, different researchers coming from all over the world. This is really the most important thing and the leitmotif of all these research projects. Oh, it was great. I mean, you start with almost nothing, because basically you start from just a very general idea, and then you go deeply into more detailed questions, and you receive input from these conferences or the seminars, and then you keep going into that topic. Sometimes it's a little bit also annoying from a certain perspective, because you don't see anything new, you don't think anything new, but then an idea just comes up and everything is back to normal, and you conclude and you have some conclusions, which is also very important. And I think Marta did really a great job, because I think that within such a time frame, so 2 years only, she published a lot of documents, a lot of books, because she cares, and this is what matters.
My role, my main interest was about the European case law in the balancing test regarding the state aid regime and the energy taxes, the eco-friendly European schemes. And this is an important topic, but a difficult one, because there is a difficult equilibrium between the legal framework and the political general perspective. The challenging perspective is to be able to pass from the political basis to a real legal framework, because we have in Europe a lot of important preliminary studies from the European Commission, but now we need to implement these studies, to implement this proposal. But unfortunately for the European countries, the period is not the best. I am a tax law professor, but in the San Pablo University project research, I have the opportunity to dialogue with a lot of real experts in state aid European law. And for me it's an interesting perspective, because the competitive law and the tax law are real close but not the same. And it's very important for tax law people to discuss, to compare their experience with the state aid law people.
I'm going to speak here about emissions trading and the way that Europe has introduced a price on carbon with its emissions trading system. And when that was done, it was in the expectation that other regions would also introduce pricing of carbon. But that has only developed rather slowly, because it's now more than 10 years ago that Europe introduced carbon pricing. We have now seen some announcements, like China is announcing they will price carbon in 2 years' time, but we're still waiting for what will the United States do. And we've seen Australia, they have actually repealed their carbon pricing. So the question is, how can we in Europe maintain our carbon pricing? And that's why I'm going to speak about some border tax adjustment, meaning that we're going to have to put a penalty on those products that are coming perhaps from the United States or from Australia, and which have high carbon content in order to protect the competitiveness of European industry. This is a very delicate issue in legal terms, and also in diplomatic terms it's a delicate issue. But I think this is necessary that we think more about this since other regions are moving so slowly forward.
I think we can both learn from each other as we think about the challenges of how to try to use the tax system to achieve a greener environment and greener economy. And the EU system of state aid has a lot of really valuable principles in it. So I think the US can use that as a sounding board for thinking about how it uses tax incentives, and I think it's useful for the EU to kind of see how it works in the US to think about the relative merits from its perspective as well. Very, very interesting. It was interesting to see the project evolve through the different phases. I think each workshop set a very good foundation for moving on to the next step, so it built very logically from place to place. People were very good about helping me come in by Skype when I couldn't be here, but it was just terrific to have the final conference when most people could be here to participate and have the discussions in person. So I was very impressed.